Well, hello everybody. It's me, Mitch. The subject for today is something that we hear more and more about. And I'm going to talk about it while I cook my first meal of the day, which just so happens to be bacon and eggs. And that's significant. That's significant because today's subject is how can I make sure that I get enough fat in my diet to properly do carnivore. There's a lot of talk these days about the role of fat and protein, the ratio, and even the dangers and the bad effects of getting not enough fat and too much protein, which, depending on who you listen to, sounds like that's a worst case scenario. Too much protein? Well, isn't all the talk these days about adding protein to everything? And I think that's kind of indicative of how fads happen when people do things and just overcompensate for things that other people think are problems. So now, not only are we as a collective brainwashed society trying to get rid of the sugars and the seed oils and all the things that we know, pretty much we know, I don't think everybody else knows, but that we know are causing problems. And we may just be, and the jury's still out, replacing it with a philosophy that is just as bad and can cause just as much harm and damage. And that is too much protein. The one thing that seems to be constant is that most people and most advice, especially from the brainwashed crowd, seems to leave the fact that fat, no matter whether you focus on carbs, plants, vegetables, that everybody knows that fat, especially cholesterol too, is the enemy and it's bad for us. So what we're doing to ourselves, instead of just saying we need, I think ideally, to be on a high fat, low carb, very moderate protein diet, we have to figure out ways to add the fat. And my good friend Dr. Robert Kiltz advocates just carving off hunks of fat from raw meat and eating them. And he may be right. In fact, I think in theory, he's probably more right than most. Even raw meat can be a problem. Lean meat, any kind of lean meat, cooked raw or otherwise, can't be good by virtue of the fact that there's not enough fat. And I think that dietary fat, animal fat, is the one thing we should be concentrating on getting more of, not just replacing one bad idea with the next. Now, I'm just kind of theorizing here. Everything that I've heard, I've learned in my journey to try to figure this out. Obviously, we haven't got it all figured out yet because we keep getting sicker. We keep getting sicker, fatter, unhealthier, more and more drugs, more and more doctors. I do think that the emphasis on fat is not misplaced. I think that as we really learn the physiology of the human body and even study animals, we find that fat is probably the most essential thing for us to eat, even though it's been demonized so much. And I think the problem that many carnivores have today, in fact, I think the major problem that many carnivores have, is we're focusing too much on meat and protein. We've pretty well got the carb thing figured out, but we're just trading one problem for another, and that is something that we can call protein poisoning. And what happens to our physiology when we don't get enough fat? This is my challenge right now. Like many of you, I'm not ready yet to start eating nothing but raw food. I'm not ready yet to start taking a big raw ribeye and carving off chunks of raw animal fat and just eating that. And I think most of us aren't ready for that either. So the challenge for me is always 70 to 80% of my calories, I've pretty well figured, have to come from fat. How can I do that? If I make burger patties, even if raw they contain the right ratio of fat, it renders out when cooking. I pretty well settled right now. I think the single healthiest meal that I have been eating since I started carnivore, and maybe the reason why carnivore has worked so well for me, is that my most often eaten food is bacon and eggs. Bacon and eggs. Maybe the most demonized, ill health causing food that takes the blame by the brainwashed masses. And we all know why that is. But when you consider bacon and eggs, look at it. It seems like it's mostly fat. And even if the fat renders out of it, is that still better for us to eat that rendered fat than to eat no fat and too much protein? We got to enjoy our food. We have to enjoy the way it tastes. Secondly, let's look at eggs. I've elevated eggs to one of the greatest answers for carnivores. You have a nature's perfect food, nature's perfect vitamin pill. Every nutrient, every compound, every amino acid, the right kind of fats in the right ratio necessary to build a living chicken. And it's all contained inside an egg. So I've got 5 pasture-raised eggs in this jar. By weight, 50% of this is good fat, necessary fat. The other 50% is cholesterol, sugars, small quantity, all the things that life needs. And since the chicken comes out of the egg without having to take supplements or anything else from the outside, logic would dictate that everything necessary for life is in that egg. Now, where does the bacon and eggs come in? Well, we got the bacon sizzling in the pan here. Right thick cut bacon that I get from Sam's Club. When it's done cooking, there'll be a lot of fat rendered out in the pan. what I'm going to do is figure out a way to eat that fat and not throw anything away. So all the fat that started out in that bacon, which is definitely fatty meat, and all the fat which started out in these eggs is going to be consumed by me. And I can rest assured that that meal was not short on animal fat in any way. Now, is there a chance that maybe the cooking and the heat has deteriorated some of these compounds? Yeah, there is. But trying to achieve perfection without actually living like our ancestors did a million years ago, eating fresh killed raw meat, which is not practical in today's society. We have 8 billion people on this world. How do we do it? How do we make sure that if we're going to go to all the mental exercise and acquisition of the right kinds of foods, how do we make sure that we get adequate fat? Well, try to eat fatty cuts of meat. But between what the butcher trims off, what we trim off because we're not used to it, we're getting more protein. We're getting more of the lean than we're actually getting the fat. That doesn't help. Eating a lot of eggs is a great step forward. So excuse me while I beat my eggs. And I beat them with my right hand now, which is improving and getting strength back. Look at this. Wow. And thank you. So, the bacon is done. I'll remove the bacon from the frying pan. And I know I get scolded for putting it on a paper towel because I'm supposed to eat the grease, eat the fat, but I don't think I'm losing that much fat out of the bacon on the paper towel. What I've got left in my frying pan here is the fat from the bacon. So rather than save it, I'm going to cook the eggs in it. And maybe the eggs get a little well done. That's my taste. You can make them any way you like. But you'll see when I'm all done with this, the big tell, the big reveal about the fact that this may be one of the tastiest, healthiest meals a human being can eat. I don't care what diet you're on. That's what I believe. That's my opinion, and I'm going to stick to it. Because I've been eating this at least 4 or 5 times a week ever since I started carnivore. And I'm getting the results that I want to get and fielding questions from you saying, well, I'm doing carnivore. It's not working. What am I doing wrong? And I think the most obvious answer to what are you doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? Can boil down to too much protein, not enough fat. I think we need to go out of our way to eat more fat. Interestingly enough, humans have been doing this for quite a while, even if they didn't know why. Look at cold cuts. Look at the Italian cold cuts. It's mostly fat. And they're generally not even cooked. They're just cured. Could cold cuts, if they're not adulterated with too many chemicals or preservatives, be healthier than anything else to eat? Well, certainly carnivore has thrown dietary advice, turned it upside down. I was reminded of this when I saw Kiltz slice off a piece of that ribeye, a very thin piece, and he held it out, and it looked like a cold cut. It was raw. It could very well have been cured, but it was raw. It had big bunches of fat in it, and he popped it in his mouth and he ate it. It was dry aged. It had salt, but that was about it. It wasn't unhealthy. It wasn't full of unhealthy chemicals. Wow, I guess this omelet's going to turn into scrambled eggs. I talk too much and don't cook enough here. Okay, but what I want you to notice, and this is the point of this whole little video, is look at the frying pan. Look at the frying pan. Where'd the fat go? Where did all that fat that rendered out of the bacon go? Where is it? Where is it? Wow. Where is it? Is it in the pan? Let's see. Let's see. Let's take the eggs out of the pan. Do the eggs look like they're really greasy? No. But look. Look at the pan. The pan, for all intents and purposes, is dry. What have I done here? I mean, you've all seen this done many times. God, how many times have I made a video cooking myself bacon and eggs? It's incredible, but take a look. That is delicious. That has every nutrient known to man in it. That has no less than 70% fat by calories, maybe more. And not a single drop of any of that good nutritious stuff is going to go down the drain, because I'm just going to basically lightly wipe out that pan with a paper towel and be ready to cook in again. So what I've got here is, without a doubt, the easiest meal to prepare. Takes a few minutes. The easiest meal on the planet to clean up after. Probably one of the most nutritious things that carnivores can eat. Is right there in front of us if we can stop listening to the misguided propaganda about worrying about that this in some manner is going to give us heart attacks and kill us. That is nonsense. That is propaganda. The hardest part of successfully being a carnivore is to have enough confidence in what should be obvious to everybody, because this is the food that our ancestors have been eating for thousands and thousands of years. They have not been eating chicken breasts and Brussels sprouts. This is real human food, and it's delicious. So I'm going to go enjoy this, guilt-free, knowing that I've done what I think, in my opinion, is one of the best ways for people who just can't bring themselves yet. Maybe you'll work into it. Maybe I will. Trying to cook my meat leaner. More rare, not leaner, more rare. But I'm not there to raw yet, and I think most of us aren't. And to make sure you get enough fat, which I think is one of the most important points about succeeding on a carnivore diet or carnivore lifestyle, is eat a lot of bacon and eggs. And coincidentally, BBBE means beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. We should consider those the 4 basic food groups, and everybody be a lot better off. So enjoy your bacon and eggs. I'm going to go enjoy mine, take the rest of the day off, and eat bacon and eggs.